Hello again. Welcome back to Sinai Temple. My name is Cantor Feldman, and it's a pleasure to be with you to continue our series, Meaning and Methods of Prayer, where we take a deep dive into our Siddur. In our case here at Sinai Temple, a conservative synagogue, Siddur Lev Shalem, published by the Rabbinical Assembly. And we're going to take a look at the Friday evening service, examining the tefillot, examining the prayers and the rituals, and trying to get a sense of how we are getting ready and entering into the sacred time of the week, Shabbat, our 25 hours of existing, not creating, of celebrating, of just being present. So we are going to continue our class starting with the evening service, which can be found on page 39a in our red Siddur Lev Shalem. We concluded last class with the end of the study texts, which are the final section of Kabbalat Shabbat. Remember, Kabbalat Shabbat is how we welcome in Shabbat. And then right here on page 39a is the formal start of our evening service. As I've mentioned before, we Jews pray traditionally 3 times every day. And the evening service is the very first service of the day because Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Voker, Yom Rishon. We have an evening service, Ma'ariv, we have Shacharit in the morning, and then we have Mincha in the afternoon. And that makes up our 3 times that we pray throughout the day. And in the evening service, we're going to have 2 main focuses. The first part is going to be the Shema and its blessings. The Shema, of course, referring to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, the central declaration of our faith, not necessarily a prayer, but it is included, of course, as a tefillah, as a prayer in our liturgy, but the central declaration of faith that we have one God alone, and that kind of is the foretelling to our existence as a Jewish people, our relationship between God and the Jewish people. And so we're going to have the Shema with blessings surrounding it. We're going to have a call to worship, 2 blessings before the Shema. We're going to have the Shema and its blessings and 2 blessings after the Shema as well. That's going to be the first part, the first half of our evening service. And then the main focus of the evening service is going to be just like all other services, the Amidah, as we've talked about in the past, the standing prayer. Ha-tefillah, the prayer. This is going to consist of the same general format as we had in the High Holy Days, if you followed along with that class, where there are 7 main parts, and the middle prayer number 4, is going to be the one specific to Shabbat. So without any further ado, we're going to dive right into the prayer book on page 39a. And as a review, if you haven't watched the previous class, our Siddur Lev Shalem is a wonderful resource in the fact that the page numbers are the same on both sides. The right side of the page will have the traditional Hebrew text. The left side of the page in the black text will be the translation of the traditional Hebrew. The red will be transliteration. You can see over here on the left side there's red transliteration and instructions. And then in the margins on the right side of the page you'll have historical facts about the prayer. And on the left side of the page, you'll have more of rabbinic interpretations or stories or other kavanot, other kind of meditations to kind of help us be present during this specific prayer of the service. So on page 39a, on the top right, we have the Baruchu. The Baruchu is our formal call to worship. We have the Baruchu prayer at the formal beginning of every morning service, Shacharit, and every evening service, Ma'ariv. We do not have a Baruchu in the Mincha service. In the afternoon prayers, we're just going to have an opening psalm, and we're going to go right into the Amidah, unless, of course, it's Shabbat Mincha. We can talk about that maybe in a couple weeks. So the service starts with the Chazan, the Cantor, the Shaliach Tzibur, the emissary of the community, the leader, saying, Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavorach. Bless God, the one who is blessed. It's a formal call to action for all of us present. The word Baruch Hu, if you're familiar with the Hebrew, it has the same root as blessing. Bet Resh Chaf, or Bet Resh Kaf. Baruch, levarech, to bless. But in this specific instance of the word, Baruch Hu is a command. The cantor is saying, bless Adonai, commanding us to bless the Holy One, our Creator, the one who is blessed. And as a sign that the kahal, the community, is ready, everyone responds, Baruch Adonai Hamavorach le'olam va'ed, that God is indeed blessed forever and ever. The one to whom all praise is directed, le'olam va'ed. And in our prayer book, as we have seen before, if you look at the second line in bold, we have that cool little symbol, the little squiggly line over there. It looks like almost a little guy bowing. That is the Sidur's instruction to remind us that the kahal, the community, bows during the recitation of Baruch Adonai Hamavorach le'olam va'ed. So the cantor, only I will bow at Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavorach, and then the kahal, the kehila, will bow at Baruch Adonai Hamavorach le'olam va'ed. And one more reminder about when we're bowing, because this is not only explanation of the prayers, but also the practices of how we do it. You know, oftentimes we get lost. Do I bow here? Do I stand up here? Do I sit down there? And so it's traditional that when we are bowing at specific points in the service, that we rise up for God's name. So, Baruch Adonai Hamavorach le'olam va'ed. Blessed is God, praise to Adonai, to whom all praise is directed forever and ever. The call to worship. Then everyone is seated, and we enter into the two brachot, the two blessings that come before the recitation of the Shema. And on the middle, through the bottom of page 39a, is going to be our first blessing. And this prayer is called Ma'ariv Aravim, named after the last two words of the prayer, Ha-Ma'ariv Aravim. So Aravim are evenings. Erev is literally evening, right? Erev avoker, evening and morning. So Aravim are evenings. And the word right before it is actually really beautiful, because if you're not familiar with the Hebrew text, it's very hard to translate somehow. We can rely on the English translation in the Siddur, but every translation is an interpretation. Unless you're so familiar with the Hebrew text, and I'm not saying that I'm the expert on Hebrew text, but if you're not really in tune with the method of how Hebrew is constructed, you can oftentimes lose the meaning of a word. So, for example, the last line, Baruch Ata Adonai Ha-Ma'ariv Aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, Ha-Ma'ariv. We have the same root in there, the Ayin, Resh, Vet, same root, Erev, evening, in a verb form, that God is the one who evenings the evening. It's almost impossible to translate into English, but that's what it says in the Hebrew, that we are blessing God, the one who makes evenings into evenings, or causes evenings to appear. And the translation, it says, blessed are you, Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. A poetic translation, but same nonetheless. So this prayer focuses on creation as a whole. God as author of the universe, looking out into space. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who, by his word, brings on the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their place in the sky, and who creates day and night, who rolls light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, and who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch Atah Adonai, who brings on each evening's dusk. So, as I said before, this one is all about creation, time and space, not necessarily about each one of us, but about God's role in creation generally. When we look up at the stars, and our ancestors did in the past, maybe they thought of it as a random, smattering of stars in the sky, and there's really no organization. No, that's not the case. That the entire universe, and our sages say through the Torah, the universe was created. That every star has its place in the sky. Masader et hakochavim b'mishperotem b'rakia kirtzono. That God brings on the natural forces that allow, in our perspective, the sun to rise and set, the moon to come up, the stars to be in their place in the sky. The whole kind of clockwork, the whole beautiful construction of the universe is due to God's wisdom, not due to happenstance or chance. So this prayer reminds us that the natural world is not an accident. It's not about us, but it's about the entire world, all of creation, that is set into force by God's will. And not only that, in our morning prayers, as we will look at, the tradition teaches us that creation is not just something that happened in the past. It's a continuous process, that if God were to stop creating for even a fraction of a second, all of creation would be gone. So we give thanks to God, Bechol yom tamid ma'aseh vereshit, that every day, every moment, every second, God is continuing to renew the work of creation day by day. So a really wonderful way to prepare us for the Shema, that God is the creator of the universe and sets the world into order by his will. If we turn the page, there's 39b, an alternate prayer. And then on page 40, this is going to be the second bracha, the second prayer before the Shema. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael. The prayer is called Ahavat Olam, literally timeless love. This is going to be similar in theme in the morning service to the prayer Ahava Rabbah, with abundant love, which also precedes the Shema in the morning service. And this prayer over here can be seen truly in preparation for the Shema, because I want to step ahead for 1 second. In the Shema and in the Ve'ahavta, it says that we should love Adonai, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. We should love Adonai, our God, with all of our hearts, with all of our soul, and with all of our spirit. V'chol me'odecha. And why should we love God? It's not just a command out of nowhere. It's actually a response to this prayer right here, Ahavat Olam. Let's read it. Ahavat Olam. With timeless love, you have loved your people Israel. Your people, the house of Israel. So it's a reciprocal relationship. Ve'ahavta is a response. We love God because God loves us. A give and take. But of course, any relationship, any give and take, any display of love has certain things that go along with it. It's not just, I love you, you love me. It's what is part of this love relationship. And in our relationship with God, it's the mitzvot. It's the Torah. So with timeless love, God has loved your people, the house of Israel. You have taught us Torah and mitzvot, chukim umishpatim, statutes and laws. So that's the expression of love. The expression of God's love for us is through the Torah, the teaching, the mitzvot. Al kain, therefore, Adonai our God, beshochveinu uvakumenu, as we lie down and as we rise up, we shall speak of your laws, rejoicing in the words of your Torah and your mitzvot forever and ever. For they are our life and the fullness of our days, and on them we shall meditate day and night. And then the Chatima, the concluding line, Ve'avatcha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Do not ever withdraw your love from us. Baruch ata Adonai, blessed is God who loves the people Israel. So isn't that beautiful? This is an expression of God's love for us throughout eternity, from generation to generation, through the gift of Torah, through the gift of our history, our laws, our values, our ethics, our connection to our ancestors, our unbroken chain our unbroken link in the chain of traditions spanning thousands of years into the past and, God willing, thousands of years into the future. God's love for us, which leads us to declare we've finally arrived at the first part of our service, the Shema, the first central prayer in our service, the Shema, which can be found on page 41. So as I mentioned before, the Shema is the central declaration of faith. It comes from Deuteronomy right there in the Torah, chapter 6, verse 4. And it literally says, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. So the central declaration of faith, these 6 words, so powerful, we could have a whole class dedicated just to the Shema, but for now, just want to point out that the declaration of the Shema is central to our evening service. It is the first central part of our service, and then it leads us into the Amidah, which is the second and truly the essence, the ikar of our service. Right under the Shema, you'll see recited quietly, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Praised be the name of the one whose glorious sovereignty is forever and ever. This line is recited quietly, as it says here in the Siddur. And it's recited quietly every day of the year, morning, afternoon, and evening, except for one, of course, Yom Kippur. Whenever we say everything is done one way except for one day of the year, almost always we're going to talk about Yom Kippur. So on Yom Kippur, we recite that line out loud. And if you want to know why, watch my class on the High Holiday Liturgy. Get a shameless self-plug to watch my other class. We go into that a little bit. So following the recitation of the Shema, we go right into verse 5 of chapter 6. As I mentioned, chapter 6, verse 4 is the Shema. What's verse 5? Ve'ahavta. So these are literally the words in the Torah that come right after the Shema. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all that is yours. These words that I command you today shall be taken to your heart. Teach them, v'shinantam. Teach them again and again and again to your children. Speak of them, okay, what? B'shivtecha b'veitecha uvelechtecha b'derech. When you sit in your home and when you walk on your way. B'shoch becha uvekumecha. When you lie down and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand. This refers to the mitzvah of tefillin that we wear every weekday morning, non-holiday, non-Shabbat morning. Vehayu letotafot bein einecha. They should be a symbol, a sign. In English, phylacteries, they should be for totafot, between your eyes. This refers to the head tefillin. And then, of course, how do we know a home is a Jewish home? You will see a mezuzah on the front door, right? The mezuzah, that little tiny compartment where we put the text. What is a mezuzah? A mezuzah is actually a doorpost. That's the definition. We call them mezuzot because they are the containers that we affix the words of here, the ve'ahavta, and also in the tefillin we have other mentions of when we put on tefillin, but specifically on the doorpost of our house we have this text. The Shema is in the mezuzah. So it says over here we should write these words upon the doorpost of our home and on our gates. That's the conclusion of the first paragraph of the Shema, Deuteronomy 6, chapter 4 through 9. Okay, so we have 2 more blessings. It's actually 2 more paragraphs of the Shema. We're still in the Shema. Remember, we had the call to worship, the 2 blessings before the Shema. We had Ma'ariv Aravim, the evening prayer, and then Ahavat Olam, God's love for us. Now we're in the Shema. We have the Shema, the declaration of faith, and the 3 paragraphs of the Shema. The first paragraph was the Ve'ahavta. We turn the page to page 42. And we have, in the top half of page 42, the second paragraph of the Shema, Ve'haya im shamoa tishme'u. If you will hear and obey the mitzvot that I command you this day. This is going to be a paragraph from Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, specifically chapter 11, verses 13 through 21. And if you look through this paragraph, I don't want to read the whole thing right now, but this is all about reward and punishment. It's one of the central themes in the book of Deuteronomy, that if you follow the mitzvot, good things will happen to you. If you do not follow the mitzvot, not so good things will happen to you. So it's kind of a reminder to observe the commandments in order for good things to be us. Now we can talk. That's a whole other lecture about reward and punishment and how we interpret that today. But this has been part of our tradition for at least 1,000 years, probably a couple thousand years. But it's a little bit of a theological struggle for us, and it's something that's definitely worth considering. But that's really the main theme of this, that what we do in this world has consequences. What we do matters, and we should really take seriously everything that we are doing, not only in our words, but also in our actions. The third paragraph of the Shema, in the middle of page 42 through the bottom, is also from the Torah. These three paragraphs are from the Torah. First one was from Deuteronomy, second one from Deuteronomy, and the third paragraph from Numbers, chapter 15, verses 37 through 41. And this paragraph is all about the mitzvah of tzitzit, how we put tzitzit, or the meaning behind putting on tzitzit and what it's supposed to remind us of. So, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, Adonai said to Moses, Daber el bnei Yisrael v'ramata lehem v'yasu lehem tzitzit. Speak to the people of Israel and instruct them in every generation. They shall put on tzitzit on the corners of their garments, placing a thread of blue on the tzitzit, the fringe of each corner. That shall be your tzitzit. You shall look at it and remember all the mitzvot of Adonai and fulfill them, and not be seduced by your own eyes and heart as they lead you astray. Leman tizkeru ve'asitem. Then you will remember and fulfill all of my mitzvot and be holy before your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. So why do we wear tzitzit? Here's the proof text. The proof text is that we look at the tzitzit and we are reminded of the mitzvot, all of the mitzvot in the Torah. It's there as a reminder. And we are instructed to tie the tzitzit. Tzitzit are fringes. We're instructed to tie them on the four corners of our garments. Now, I don't know about you, but my jacket and my shirt, they don't really have four corners, right? Maybe in ancient times, our begadim, our clothing had four corners. So now what do? We wear a garment that has four corners, a talis or a talit. A talit is a garment with four corners. And on each of those corners, we tie a tzitzit. And there's also an interesting two words over here at the beginning. It says, Venatnu al tzitzit hakanaf petil techelet. That you should literally put a thread of techelet. It's sometimes translated as blue, that there's a blue thread that you're supposed to put on one of the tzitzit, on one of the strings of the tzitzit. But there's a machloket, a disagreement as to if we truly know the contents of that actual blue dye, like what makes a tzitzit blue. So you can find tzitzit where one of the strings is blue, and if you want to know why, this is why. We're supposed to actually put a blue string on as part of the tzitzit, but many of us don't do that because our tradition is not really sure, what the exact dye composition is for that blue to make it an actual techelet. So in order to not mess it up, it's one of those things that, we want to make sure if it's going to be techelet, it's got to be techelet. So that's why most of our tzitzit that you'll see here at Sinai and in our community will not have that blue string. Okay, the paragraph ends with Adonai Elohechem emet. Adonai, your God, truly. So we turn the page. Yes? Why truly? Truly. Good question. So truly is in bold. You see the word emet is in bold. The text actually ends, Ani Adonai Elohechem. I am Adonai, your God. That's the end of the verse. That's the end of the pasuk. But if you turn the page to page 43, you'll see that the first word, and this is actually, it shouldn't be there, that the first word of the prayer on page 43 is emet. So that's why. So basically, the prayer on page 43 is emet ve'emunah kozot. It's not ve'emunah kozot. So in most Sidurim, you'll see emet ve'emunah kozot. In other words, this is our enduring affirmation. But in our Sidur here, it attaches the word emet, truth, to the end of the third paragraph of the Shema. So the reason why emet is there is because it's the first word of the next prayer. It's just put on this page. Okay, so we have concluded the Shema and its paragraphs, the 3 paragraphs of the Shema, and now we are on to the 2 brachot, the 2 blessings after the Shema. The first bracha is going to be all about affirmation of what we have just spoken about, and thanking God for the miracle of redemption. Emet ve'emunah. This is our enduring affirmation, binding on us, that Adonai is our God and there is none other, and we, Israel, are God's people. God is our sovereign, redeeming us from earthly rulers, delivering us from the hand of all tyrants, bringing judgment upon our oppressors and just retribution upon our mortal enemies, performing wonders beyond understanding and marvels beyond all reckoning. God places us, the living, not allowing our steps to falter, and leads us past the false altars of our enemies, exalting us above all those who hate us. God willing, this is so true. Unfortunately today, that's the horrible stain of anti-Semitism is rearing its ugly face again. And once again, our liturgy is here to provide us comfort, to provide us strength and inspiration. It's amazing. You look at the Siddur differently. The words never change, but we change. Our circumstances change, and our Siddur and our tradition is always here to help us. Adonai avenged us. Now the transition to remembering the Exodus. Adonai avenged us with miracles before Paro, before Pharaoh, offered signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. God smote in anger all of Egypt's firstborn, brought Israel from its midst to lasting freedom, and led them through the divided water of the Sea of Reeds. As their pursuers and enemies drowned in the depths, God's children, behind the power of the divine, they praised and acknowledged God's name. We turn the page to page 44. Now, the one line on page 44 before the famous quotation from Exodus, right after we cross the Sea of Reeds on dry land, Umalchuto baratzon kiblu alehem, willingly accept God's sovereignty. This is the connection over here. It says that God's children praised and acknowledged God's name, willingly accept God's sovereignty. Then Moshe u'Miriam, Moses, Miriam, and the entire people of Israel joyfully sang to you, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh norati lot osefele. Who is like you, Adonai, among the mighty? Who is like you, adorned in holiness, revered in praise, working wonders? Malchutecha ra'u vanecha. This text will change if you pay attention. This middle line changes, and the ending changes as well, if it's an evening service or a morning service. So here in the evening, Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, your children recognized your sovereignty as you split the sea before Moses. Ze eli anu ve'amru. This is my God, they responded and said, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. God shall reign, God will reign forever and ever. And then the concluding rabbinic verses, this is now out of it's going back and forth. The Mi Chamocha text and the Adonai Yimloch are all part of Exodus. But this opening part, U'Malchuto, and the middle paragraph, Malchutecha and Vene Emar, are kind of rabbinic texts that are inserted before and after. Okay? But it's taken. Like, for example, this one, Vene Emar Ki Fada Adonai, that quote of Ki Fada Adonai is taken from Jeremiah. So it's rabbinic, but it's also culled from our entire biblical source. Nothing was kind of created in a vacuum. It all, is a reminder of our entire experience. And the rabbis and our ancestors who wrote the prayer book, they were very, very familiar with all of our liturgy, with all of our stories, with Midrash. And so they brought the essence of our tradition into our most common, our most widely used and experienced books, the Siddur. V'ne'emar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov uge'alo miyad chazak mimenu. And so it is written, Adonai has rescued Jacob and redeemed him from the hand of those more powerful than he. Baruch ata Adonai, who redeemed the people Israel. Blessed is Adonai, who redeemed the people Israel. Blessing 1 after the Shema. We turn the page to page 45. And now we make it to Hashkivenu. The second prayer after the Shema is going to deal with asking for God's protection when we are most vulnerable. Evening service, we're preparing for the night, we're preparing to go to sleep, and it's a scary time. We don't know what's going to happen to us. We pray for God's protection. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom. Allow us, Adonai, our God, to sleep peacefully. V'ha'amidenu malkeinu lechayim. And waken us to life, our sovereign. Ufros aleinu sukat shelomecha. I love this term. A sukkah, as we just experienced a couple months ago now, a sukkah is a temporary structure, but it provides us protection while we're outside. In this case, we're asking for God to provide us with sukkah, a sukkah of peace, a canopy of peace. Restore us with your good counsel and save us for the sake of your name. Shield us. Ve'haser me'aleinu oyev dever v'cher v'ra'a ve'agon ve'haser satan milfanenu ume'acharenu. The true expression of our innermost fears at night. Remove from us enemies, pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us. Uvetzel kenafecha tastirenu. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. Ki el shomrenu umatzilenu ata. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. And you, God, are sovereign, merciful, and compassionate. Ushemor tzeitenu uvoenu lechayimu leshalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Ensure our going and our coming for life and peace, now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Blessed is Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us, over all the people Israel, and over all of Jerusalem. And the special ending for Hashkivenu, that last line, is only recited on Shabbatot, on holidays, and on the Yamim Noraim, the high holy days. All other times during the week, we have this Hashkivenu prayer, the evening prayer, but the prayer just ends with Shomer Amo Yisrael La'ad, that we bless God, the one who is the guardian of his people Israel forever. But that this extra mention of that sukkah as well, that sukkat shalom, that the spreading of the canopy of peace over us, over all of Israel, and all over Jerusalem as well. Absolutely beautiful text. I love the Hashkivenu text. So many countless musical settings have been set to this prayer. It was traditional when I was growing up, and in many synagogues too, the cantor has a musical moment with Hashkivenu. It's a chance for the chazan, the shaliach tzibur, to pray these words with beautiful musical settings. Many with accompaniment in non-Orthodox synagogues. There are so many. I love the Hashkivenu of Ami Aloni, of Meir Finkelstein, of Max Janowski, Max Helfman. There are so many beautiful settings of Hashkivenu. Craig Taubman, of course, modern settings. It's so wonderful to dwell on these words and to really pray them, to acknowledge that there's so many things out of our control. And especially when we're asleep, we really have no control. We need God's protection. We need God to watch over us and protect us with the Sukkah Shalom, the Sukkah of peace, to ensure that we can wake up, Ve'ha'amidenu malkeinu lechayim, to wake us up renewed to life again the next morning. That's the second prayer. We've had the call to worship, the two blessings before the Shema, the two blessings after the Shema, redemption, right? Acknowledging that all these things are true, with emet ve'emunah kozot, the prayer for redemption, ending in mi chamocha, and then the prayer to lie us down in peace, which is the Hashkivenu. Now on page 46, there's going to be two options, but we're going to focus on the option for Shabbat. It's the biblical sanctification of the day. So on Shabbat, we are going to be reciting the famous text from Exodus. Exodus chapter 31, verses 16 and 17. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. The people Israel shall observe Shabbat. La'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam berit olam, maintaining it as an everlasting covenant throughout all generations. Ot hi beini uvein b'nei Israel, ot hi le'olam. Between me and between the people of Israel, it is a sign for all time. Ki sheishet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz, uvayom hashvi'i shavat va'inafash. In 6 days, Adonai made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day ceased from work and rested. So this prayer of V'shamru is done here in the evening service, right before we have the Amidah. It's recited as well on Shabbat morning, before we have the Kiddush, before we have the short Kiddush right after services, as well on Shabbat morning. So that takes us into the Chatzi Kaddish. The Chatzi Kaddish, as I mentioned before, is a kind of a bookend. It tells you that something important is about to happen, right? So in this case, the Chatzi Kaddish is going to be preceding the Amidah, the central part of the evening service. And then at the end of the evening service, we're going to have a Kaddish Shalem. So I had hoped to get through the entire evening service, just like I had hoped to get through all of the service last time too, but alas, there's so much beauty and depth in our Siddur that I think now will be a good stopping point for this part of the service. So this will be part one of the evening service for Shabbat. We got through the opening call to worship, the Shema and its blessings, and leading us into the Ma'ariv Amidah, the central prayer Ma'ariv Amidah. So we're going to spend our next class focusing on the evening Amidah. So with that, I will thank you so much for joining us for our class, and look forward to seeing you again, and wishing everyone continued health and strength. Thank you so much.